You signed those shares away the second you trusted me with the login, Lauren. Did you honestly believe I would let you keep control once the numbers started dropping? Jessica and I are done playing games. Sign the rest over by morning, or the whole desert compound hears exactly how you've been hiding the real books. Hi, my name is Lauren Mitchell. I am 30 years old. The words landed like a door slamming in an empty house. I stood in the middle of our kitchen, the one with the long marble island that had always felt too big for just the two of us. Michael didn't raise his voice. He never did. He simply placed the folder on the counter between us, the corner of a legal document peeking out like it had been waiting there all along. I didn't touch it. My hands stayed at my sides while my mind raced through every late-night conversation we'd had about the business, every time he'd offered to handle the paperwork, so I could focus on the clients. The company had been mine before we married, small, steady, built from referrals in the Scottsdale luxury market. Private wellness retreats, high-end corporate escapes tucked into the desert. I had poured every extra hour into it. Michael had smiled and said he was proud. Now the folder sat there, and the silence between us felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I picked up the folder anyway. The top page was a share transfer agreement dated 6 months earlier. My signature was on it, or at least something that looked exactly like my signature. The date was the same week I had been in California for a client summit. I remembered the flight, the hotel, the way Michael had texted every night, saying he missed me and that everything at home was fine. My stomach turned. I flipped to the next page. Another transfer. Smaller this time, but recent. The beneficiary line read, Jessica Ramirez, trustee. My best friend, the woman who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had helped me pick out the desert compound furniture, who had cried with me when a big client almost walked away last year. I looked up at Michael. His face was calm, almost bored, like he was waiting for me to finish reading a menu. You used my login while I was gone, I said. The words came out flat. I was proud of that. No shake in my voice yet. He shrugged one shoulder. You left the laptop open. I was trying to help. You were stressed. I set the folder down carefully, like it might explode. Jessica knew she helped with the filings, he said. Someone had to make sure the numbers stayed clean on paper. I felt the floor tilt under me just slightly. Not enough to fall, but enough to know the ground had changed. I walked to the sink, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, and set it back down. My reflection in the window showed a woman in a simple linen shirt, hair pulled back, the same composed expression I wore when clients tried to lowball a contract. Inside, something was cracking open. I turned around. Why now? Michael checked his watch. Because the last transfer clears tomorrow. And because you started asking questions about the missing reserves last week, you should have left it alone. He walked out of the kitchen without another word. The front door clicked shut a minute later. I stayed where I was, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a golf cart on the community path outside the compound wall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went upstairs, opened the safe in the walk-in closet, and pulled out the slim fireproof box where I kept the original incorporation papers. The box was lighter than it should have been. The folder inside held only copies. The originals were gone. That was when the first real wave of cold hit me. Not panic. Something quieter and sharper. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone. I didn't call Jessica. I opened our text thread instead. The last message from her was 3 days old, a photo of her new rescue dog and a heart emoji. I scrolled up. Nothing unusual, no sudden distance, no careful wording, just the same easy rhythm we'd had since college. I closed the thread and opened my email. Nothing from Jessica, nothing from Michael's lawyer, just the usual client confirmations and one automated reminder about the quarterly tax estimate. I stood up, walked back downstairs, and poured the water down the drain. Then I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I opened my laptop, logged into the business banking portal, and checked the share registry. The numbers were already different. I closed the laptop, walked to the patio door, and stepped outside into the dry heat. The desert compound was quiet at this hour. Most of the neighbors were still at work or on the golf course. I sat on the edge of the pool and let my feet dangle in the water. The surface rippled once, then settled. My phone buzzed on the lounge chair beside me. A text from Michael. Don't do anything stupid. We can still make this clean. I didn't answer. I set the phone face down and watched a lizard dart across the stone coping. The sun was starting to drop behind the far ridge, turning the sky the color of old copper. I thought about the first time Michael and I had looked at this house together, how he had said it felt like the kind of place where people finally got to breathe. I had believed him. Now the air felt thin. I stood up, dried my feet on the towel, and went back inside. The folder was still on the counter where I had left it. I picked it up, carried it to the office, and slid it into the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Then I locked the drawer. The house was too quiet. I turned on the small speaker in the corner and let soft piano music fill the space. It didn't help. The silence underneath it was louder. I walked to the front door, locked the deadbolt, and checked the security panel. Everything was armed. I set the alarm code anyway. Then I went upstairs, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the bed with my laptop again. This time, I didn't open the banking portal. I opened a blank document and started typing. I wrote down every date I could remember when Michael had helped with paperwork. Every time Jessica had offered to pick up documents from the office because she was already in the area. Every casual suggestion that I let him handle the back end so I could focus on the creative side. The list grew longer than I expected. When I finished, I saved the document, encrypted it, and emailed a copy to myself at a private address I only used for client contracts. Then I deleted the local copy. I closed the laptop and lay back against the pillows. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Outside, the desert night was settling in the kind of dark that feels like it could swallow sound. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jessica. "Hey, are you okay? Michael said you seemed upset earlier. Call me if you want to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the reply box, then moved away. I set the phone on the nightstand without answering. The clock on the dresser read 9:17. I turned off the lamp and lay in the dark, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner and the occasional distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I kept seeing the folder on the counter the way Michael had checked his watch, like he had somewhere more important to be the easy way Jessica's name had appeared on the transfer papers. Sometime after midnight, I got up, walked to the closet, and pulled the fireproof box out again. I opened it and ran my fingers along the bottom. There was a small seam I had never noticed before. I pressed it. A thin envelope slid out. It was addressed to me in Jessica's handwriting. The postmark was from 6 weeks earlier. It had never been mailed. I sat on the floor of the closet with the envelope in my lap. My hands were steady when I opened it. The letter inside was only one page. Jessica's neat looping script filled most of it. She wrote that she was sorry, that Michael had pushed her into helping with the transfers, that she had tried to stop, but he had threatened to tell me about an old mistake she had made with a client years ago. Something small, something she had fixed, but something that could still damage her reputation in our small circle. She wrote that she had wanted to tell me in person, but kept losing her nerve. She wrote that the assets weren't gone, just moved. She gave the name of a small trust account in Nevada she had set up in my name without Michael knowing. She said the account number was in the bottom of the envelope. I turned the envelope over. A small folded slip of paper fell into my palm. The account details were there, written in the same careful handwriting. I read the letter twice, then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and slid the envelope into the inside pocket of my overnight bag. I packed 2 changes of clothes, my laptop, the fireproof box, and the small framed photo of my parents that had sat on the dresser since we moved in. I didn't leave a note. I didn't turn off any lights. I simply walked downstairs, disabled the alarm long enough to open the garage door, and backed my car out into the night. The desert road was empty. I drove with the windows down, letting the cool air rush in. The compound gate slid open when I entered the code. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. I drove until the sky started to lighten over the eastern mountains. Then I pulled into a small roadside diner on the edge of town, ordered coffee, and opened my laptop again. I transferred the contents of the Nevada account into a new account I opened under my own name at a bank 2 states away. The amount was smaller than what Michael and Jessica had taken, but it was enough. Enough to start over without touching anything that still had his name on it. While the transfer processed, I opened a new document and began drafting an email to every client on my list. I kept it short. I told them I was restructuring the business and would be in touch within 48 hours with new contact information. I didn't mention Michael or Jessica. I didn't have to. By the time the sun was fully up, the transfer had cleared. I closed the laptop, paid for the coffee, and drove west toward the highway that would take me out of Arizona. My phone rang once while I was on the road. It was Michael. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, it rang again. "Jessica this time. I turned the ringer off and kept driving. The highway stretched ahead flat and endless. I didn't know exactly where I was going yet. I only knew I wasn't going back. Somewhere around the New Mexico border, I pulled over at a rest stop and checked my email. 3 clients had already replied, all of them, asking if everything was all right and offering to wait for the new details. One of them, a longtime corporate client I had worked with for years, added a short line at the bottom, "If you need anything, say the word. You've always been straight with us." I closed the email and sat for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. The desert wind rocked the car gently. I thought about the letter in my bag, the account number, the way Jessica's handwriting had looked like she had written it in a hurry. I thought about Michael checking his watch like the whole thing was already decided. Then I started the car again and kept driving. I didn't know what the next chapter would look like yet. I only knew I was done letting other people write it for me. The highway stretched ahead into the pale morning light as I crossed the state line, the fireproof box riding in the passenger seat like a silent passenger. I kept the radio off. Every few miles, my phone lit up on the dash with another missed call or text, but I didn't reach for it. The letter from Jessica was still in my bag. The account numbers she had written down were already moved. That small act of defiance from her was the only thing keeping the road steady under my wheels. By mid-morning, I pulled into a quiet motel on the edge of a small New Mexico town. I paid cash for one night and used a name that wasn't mine on the register. The clerk didn't ask questions. I carried my bag inside, locked the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed with the laptop open before I even unpacked. The inbox was already shifting. 3 clients had replied overnight. 2 were polite, asking for updated contact details. The third was from Rachel Bennett, the head of events for a chain of high-end desert resorts I had worked with for almost 3 years. Her message was short. "Lauren, Michael called me this morning. He mentioned some concerns about the company's financial stability and suggested we pause our upcoming retreat until things are clearer. I'd like to hear your side before we make any decisions." I read it twice. My hand stayed still on the keyboard. Michael had moved faster than I expected. He was already seeding doubt with the people who paid the invoices. I typed a short reply, kept my tone professional, and said I would call her later that afternoon. Then I closed the laptop and opened the side pocket of my overnight bag to pull out a charger. A thick manila envelope slid out and landed on the carpet. It hadn't been there when I packed. I would have noticed the weight. I picked it up. The flap wasn't sealed. Inside were more share transfer documents printed on the same cheap paper as the ones Michael had left on the kitchen counter. There was also a draft divorce petition. The date at the top was from last week. Michael's lawyer's name was printed in clean block letters at the bottom. He had already listed the desert compound as marital property and the remaining business assets as joint. My name was typed in the petitioner line, but the signature space was blank. He must have printed it and slipped it into my bag when I wasn't looking, or it had fallen in when I grabbed the fireproof box in a rush. Either way, it had traveled with me across 2 state lines without me knowing. I spread the pages on the motel bedspread. The language was cold and precise. It claimed I had abandoned the marriage and the business. It asked for full control of the remaining accounts and the house. There was no mention of Jessica anywhere in the filing. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. This time, I answered without checking the screen. "Lauren." Michael's voice was calm, the same tone he had used in the kitchen. "Where are you?" I didn't answer the question. "You put divorce papers in my bag." A short pause. Then he said, "You left in the middle of the night. I had to protect myself. Sign them and we can both move on without dragging this through court. Protect yourself from what I asked. From the fact that you and Jessica moved company money while I was at a client summit." He exhaled like I was being difficult. "Jessica was helping. You were overwhelmed. We were trying to keep the business afloat by putting her name on the trust documents." Another pause, longer this time. "She earned it. She was there when you weren't." The words landed flat. I didn't feel the slap of betrayal anymore. I felt something colder and clearer. I ended the call without another word and blocked his number. 2 minutes later, Jessica's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. The notification for the message popped up immediately. "Lauren, please pick up. Michael doesn't know I wrote that letter. He thinks the Nevada account is empty. I can help you fix this if you just talk to me." I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. I needed someone who wasn't part of the circle Michael and Jessica could reach. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found Marcus Hale. We had worked together on 3 big retreats 5 years ago when my company was still small. He had moved to Colorado after selling his own event firm. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he had always been the kind of person who answered the phone even when it was inconvenient. He picked up on the third ring. Lauren Mitchell, he said, voice warm but already alert. You don't call unless something's on fire. What's going on? I told him the short version, the share transfers, Jessica's name on the documents, the divorce papers that had traveled in my bag without my knowledge. I didn't mention the letter yet. I kept my voice steady. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Michael called me yesterday, he said. Told me you were having some kind of breakdown and that the company accounts were at risk. He asked if I still had any outstanding invoices with you so he could help settle them. I told him I'd handle it directly with you. The floor under my feet seemed to tilt again, the same feeling I had in the kitchen. Marcus had been one of the steady ones. If Michael was already reaching out to people like him, the circle was shrinking faster than I could track. I need a lawyer who doesn't know either of them, I said. Someone who can look at these papers and tell me what I still control. Marcus gave me a name without hesitation. David Klein. He's in Denver. I've used him for 2 acquisitions. He doesn't play games and he hates when people hide assets. Tell him I sent you. I wrote the number down. Before I could thank him, Marcus added one more thing. Lauren, whatever you decide, don't go back to that house alone, and don't meet Jessica anywhere without someone else in the room. People who help move money like that don't usually stop at one favor. I thanked him, hung up, and sat with the phone in my hand. The divorce papers were still spread across the bed. The motel room felt smaller than it had 10 minutes earlier. I called David Klein's office. His assistant put me through after I said Marcus Hale had referred me. David's voice was direct, no small talk. Send me everything you have, he said after I gave him the basics. Scans of the transfers, the draft petition, any emails where Michael referenced the accounts. I'll look at it tonight. In the meantime, do not sign anything and do not discuss the Nevada account with anyone until I tell you it's protected. I promised I wouldn't. When I hung up, the room was quiet again, except for the low hum of the air conditioner. I packed the papers back into the envelope and slid it into the fireproof box. Then I checked out of the motel, paid cash again, and pointed the car north toward Colorado. The highway felt longer this time. Every exit sign seemed to carry the possibility that Michael or Jessica had someone waiting ahead. Halfway through the drive, my phone rang again. This time, it was Rachel Bennett. I pulled over at a rest area and answered. Lauren? I'm sorry, she said. Her voice was careful. After I spoke with Michael, I had our legal team pull the contract language. There's a clause about material changes in ownership or financial stability. They're recommending we terminate the upcoming events and look for another vendor. I fought it, but the numbers are already in the system. I closed my eyes for a second. I understand, Rachel. Thank you for telling me directly. She hesitated. If it's not true, if there's another side, I'll listen. But right now, I have to protect my own events. I know, I said. I'll send you the updated contact once I have it. She wished me luck and hung up. One more name crossed off the list of people who used to answer my calls without a second thought. I sat in the rest area parking lot with the engine idling. The divorce papers were in the box beside me. Jessica's letter was in my bag. Marcus Hale's warning about not meeting Jessica alone kept circling in my head. My phone buzzed with a new text. This one was from an old colleague I hadn't spoken to in months, someone Michael barely knew. Hey, just got an email from Michael Thompson about your company. He said you might be stepping away for personal reasons and asked if I wanted to pick up any of your pending projects. Everything okay? I didn't answer. I put the car in drive and kept going north. The mountains were starting to rise on the horizon. Denver was still hours away, but the road felt narrower than it had that morning. I didn't know what David Klein would say when he looked at the papers. I didn't know if Marcus Hale's help would be enough to stop whatever Michael and Jessica had already set in motion. I only knew that every mile I put between myself and the desert compound made the next decision feel slightly more like mine. The phone stayed silent for the rest of the drive. I kept both hands on the wheel and watched the exit signs count down. When the city skyline finally appeared, I took the first exit Marcus had texted me and followed the directions to his office building. I parked in the visitor lot, turned off the engine, and sat for a minute with the fireproof box in my lap. The envelope with the divorce papers was inside. Jessica's letter was still in my bag. Both felt heavier than they should have. I stepped out of the car, locked it, and walked toward the glass doors. My phone vibrated once in my pocket as I reached the lobby. I didn't check it. Whatever the message said could wait until after I heard what David Klein had to say about the papers Michael had accidentally sent with me across state lines. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor. I stepped out into a quiet hallway with carpet that muffled every sound. David Klein's name was on the glass beside the suite door. I pushed it open and gave the receptionist my name. She smiled politely and told me he would be right with me. I sat in the waiting area with the box on my knees and waited for the next piece of the story to begin. The receptionist called my name from the doorway. I stood box in hand and followed her down a short hallway into a corner office with wide windows overlooking the Denver skyline. David Klein rose from behind a clean desk. He was in his late 40s suit jacket, off sleeves rolled once. He shook my hand without smiling and gestured to the chair across from him. "Marcus said you have paperwork," he said. "Let's see it." I set the fireproof box on the desk and opened it. The manila envelope with the divorce draft and extra transfer pages came out first. Then the copies of the earlier agreements Michael had left on the kitchen counter. David took them without comment and began reading. The only sound was the soft tick of a wall clock and the occasional page turn. After several minutes, he looked up. "Your husband transferred controlling shares of your company into a trust that lists your best friend as trustee. He did it while you were out of state on business. The signature on the later documents looks like yours, but the notary stamp is from a county you weren't in that week. That alone gives us leverage." He tapped the divorce draft. "This was never filed. It's a threat dressed up as paperwork. He left it where you would find it so you would panic and sign something cleaner. Classic move when someone thinks they already have the assets moved." My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. David noticed but didn't comment. "He also reached out to at least one of your clients," I said. "Rachel Bennett. She terminated our contracts this morning because of material changes in ownership." David made a note. "We'll send a preservation letter today. Any communication he makes from this point forward about the business can be used to show pattern. Do not respond to him or to Jessica Ramirez directly. Everything goes through me." The phone vibrated again. This time I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I let it ring out. David continued. "The Nevada account Jessica Ramirez set up in your name is the cleanest part of this. She put it in your name only with a clause that any challenge to it triggers an audit of the originating transfers. That was either very stupid or very deliberate on her part. Either way, it protects you for now." He slid a single sheet across the desk. "Sign this engagement letter. I'll file a temporary restraining order on any further transfers and start discovery on the trust." We move fast before he tries to hide more. I signed without hesitation. The phone buzzed a third time. This time the screen showed Michael's name. I had unblocked it for exactly this moment. David raised an eyebrow. "You want to take it?" I nodded and put the call on speaker. Michael's voice filled the quiet office. "Lauren, stop whatever you're doing. We can still settle this between us. You don't need a lawyer turning everything into a fight." I kept my tone even. "You already turned it into a fight when you moved the shares and left divorce papers in my bag. David Klein is handling it now." A short silence. Then Michael's voice sharpened. "Klein, you went to Denver. Marcus Hale put you up to this, didn't he? That old man always thought he knew better than everyone." David wrote the name Marcus Hale on his pad and circled it once. "Jessica is here with me," Michael continued. "She wants to talk. Put us on speaker if you haven't already." I didn't answer. Jessica's voice came on the line a moment later, softer, almost pleading. "Lauren, I never wanted it to go this far. Michael said if I didn't help with the filings, he would tell you about that client issue from 3 years ago. The one I fixed. He said it would ruin everything we built together. I wrote the letter because I couldn't sleep anymore. I thought if you found the account, you would at least have something." Michael cut in. "She's trying to save herself now. Don't listen to her. Sign the clean version I sent and we all walk away. You keep the house in Scottsdale. We keep the business. Simple." I looked at David. He gave a small shake of his head. "I'm not signing anything I said, and the Nevada account stays where it is. You already took what you could. I'm done negotiating with people who used my login while I was working." Jessica spoke again, voice cracking. "He told me you would never forgive me anyway. That the only way to protect myself was to stay on his side." I was wrong. I'm sorry. The line went quiet for a beat, then Michael's voice returned colder. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Once this goes public, no client in the desert will touch you again." Jessica and I already started making calls. David leaned forward slightly and spoke for the first time. "Mr. Thompson, This call is being recorded with your knowledge now that you're on speaker with counsel present. Any further threats about client relationships will be documented. I suggest you end the call and direct future communication to my office. Michael hung up without another word. David sat back. That was useful. The threat about clients gives us an interference claim. The fact that Jessica admitted coercion on a recorded line helps your case against the trust. We file first thing tomorrow. My phone lit up again almost immediately. This time it was a text from my sister Amanda Torres. We hadn't spoken much since I moved to the compound. She lived in Phoenix and had always stayed neutral when things got tense between Michael and me. The message read, Michael called Mom and Dad. He said you're having some kind of breakdown and taking money that isn't yours. He asked if I could talk to you. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Just sign whatever he sent so everyone can move on. I showed the screen to David. He read it and handed the phone back. Family pressure is common in these situations, he said. We can add a no-contact request if you want. It won't stop the calls, but it creates a record. I typed a short reply to Amanda. I'm not signing. I have a lawyer. If you want to talk about what actually happened, call me when you're ready to hear my side. Otherwise, I need space. I hit send, then blocked her number. The childhood bond that had survived distance and different lives snapped in that single action. It hurt, but the pain was clean. No more pretending we were still the same two girls who shared a bedroom growing up. David stood. Go get some rest. I'll have the filings ready by morning. Marcus Hale already called while you were on the phone. He said to tell you his guest room is open if you need a place tonight. He also said something about an old friend who might have more information if we need it. I thanked him and left the office with the box under my arm. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. When the doors opened in the lobby, my phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Marcus. David told me you're done for the day, he said. Come over. We'll order something that isn't motel coffee, and you can tell me what happened in that meeting. I drove to his house in the foothills. The sun was dropping behind the mountains when I pulled into the driveway. Marcus met me at the door with a glass of water and no questions yet. We sat on his back deck while the city lights came on below us. He listened while I told him about the call about Jessica's admission about Amanda's text. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I reached out to Jessica 3 weeks ago, he said finally. After Michael called me the first time asking about invoices, I told her I knew something was off and that if she had any conscience left, she should write it down and make sure you found it. She didn't answer me for 2 days. Then she sent one message back. It just said, I already did. I didn't know about the letter until you told me this morning. That was her quiet way of trying to fix it before everything blew up. The twist landed without fanfare. Marcus had been the quiet push behind the letter that had traveled in my bag across state lines. He hadn't told me earlier because he didn't want to make the choice for me. He had simply created the opening and waited to see if I would walk through it. I didn't thank him out loud. The quiet between us said enough. Over the next 2 weeks, David filed the necessary papers. The temporary orders came through quickly. The Nevada account stayed protected. The trust Michael and Jessica had created began to unravel under discovery. 2 more clients who had paused after Michael's calls reached out on their own once they saw the court filings. They said the rumors had felt off from the start. Michael stopped calling after the 3rd cease and desist letter. Jessica sent one final text the day before the hearing. It was short. I hope you find peace. I'm sorry I helped take it from you. I didn't reply. I blocked the number and deleted the thread. Amanda never called back. The silence from my childhood family settled into something permanent. I didn't chase it. Some bonds end because one person chooses peace over pretending. 3 months later, I signed a lease on a small office space in Denver with a view of the same mountains I had watched from Marcus's deck. The new company name was simple, just my name and the word retreats. Marcus became a silent advisor. David handled the final settlement. Michael walked away with the Scottsdale house and nothing else. Jessica's name was removed from every document. The social circle that had started to pull away after Michael's calls quietly reformed around the truth once the filings became public record. People who had once sent polite distance texts now sent quiet referrals instead. I never went back to the desert compound. The past stayed there with the empty pool and the folder that had started everything. One evening, after the new office was set up, I sat at the desk with the fireproof box open in front of me. The divorce papers were long gone, shredded by David's office. Jessica's letter was still inside, folded neatly. I read it one last time, then placed it back in the envelope and closed the box. The lesson had arrived slowly and without drama. No contact was not punishment, it was the daily choice to stop letting other people's chaos write the next page. Every morning, I chose it again when I turned off the phone notifications from unknown numbers. Every evening, I chose it again when I closed the laptop and walked away from the desk. I had built something once by trusting the wrong people with the keys. I was building something new by keeping the keys in my own hand. Thank you for listening to my story. If someone you trusted with the work you built and the heart you gave tried to rewrite the rules while you were looking the other way, would you have answered that last call from them, or would you have chosen the quiet road out instead?